The sound of metal clattering against the cabin floor cut through the recycled air like a gunshot. Every head turned, every breath stopped. 183 passengers on United Flight 1147 felt their hearts freeze in the same instant. A man emerged from the first-class lavatory, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle, wrapped in a black tactical jacket. His face looked like it had been carved from stone and then cracked by violence. Old scars traced white lines across his jaw and forehead. His eyes were the color of winter ice and just as cold. He moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had done this before, many times before. In his right hand, a ceramic blade caught the overhead light, the kind of blade that slipped through metal detectors like water through fingers. In his left hand, a pistol, black, compact. The barrel pointed at the ceiling for now, but not for long. Two other men rose from their seats in perfect synchronization, one from row 3, one from row 17. They moved like shadows given form, blocking the aisles, cutting off any possibility of escape. The takeover of United Flight 1147 had begun. The big man, the one with the scars, grabbed the nearest flight attendant by the collar of her navy blue uniform. She was small, maybe 5'4". Dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her name tag caught the light as she was lifted off her feet. Sierra Cole. He hurled her to the ground like she weighed nothing. She hit the carpet hard. Her knees absorbed the impact. A tray of drinks she had been carrying scattered across the aisle in a symphony of breaking glass and spilling liquid. Orange juice spread like a golden stain across the blue carpet. Ice cubes skittered under seats. She did not scream. She did not cry. The passengers watched in frozen horror. Children clutched their mothers. Businessmen who moments ago had been typing on laptops now sat with hands raised in surrender. An elderly woman in row 7 pressed her rosary to her lips, whispering prayers that no one could hear. The scarred man stood over the fallen flight attendant with the satisfaction of a predator who had just established dominance. His cold eyes swept across the cabin, drinking in the fear like fine wine. "Look at her," he commanded. His voice carried the gravelly authority of someone accustomed to violence, someone who enjoyed it. This is what happens to anyone who thinks about being a hero today. The flight attendant slowly raised her head, and for a fraction of a second, so brief that most people would have missed it entirely, something strange happened. Her eyes changed. Those gray eyes swept the cabin with a precision that seemed almost mechanical. Not the frantic scanning of a terrified victim. Something else. Something calculating. Something that didn't belong in the eyes of a woman who had just been thrown to the ground by a man twice her size. 3 hijackers. Positions confirmed. Row 3, row 17, main cabin aisle, weapons, 2 ceramic blades visible, 1 handgun, possibly a Glock 19, possibly a replica. Difficult to confirm at this distance. Exits, forward galley blocked, rear galley blocked, emergency exits non-viable at 35,000 feet, altitude, cruising, approximately 35,000 feet based on cabin pressure and engine sound. The assessment took less than 2 seconds. Then her eyes went blank again. Submissive. Defeated. The eyes of a victim accepting her fate. The transformation was so complete, so seamless, that only one person on the entire aircraft noticed it. In row 12, a man with salt and pepper hair and hands calloused from decades of mechanical work paused mid-breath. Colonel Marcus Webb, United States Air Force retired, had spent 18 years servicing F-16 engines at Nellis Air Force Base. He had seen enough military personnel in his lifetime to recognize something that most civilians would miss entirely. The way she fell, too controlled. She had rolled with the impact, distributing the force across her body instead of taking it on her joints. A technique called PLF, parachute landing fall. Every airborne soldier learned it. Every pilot who might need to eject learned it. But flight attendants? Flight attendants learned how to serve coffee and demonstrate safety equipment. They did not learn how to fall like paratroopers. Webb watched as the young woman stood up, weight balanced, knees slightly bent, center of gravity low, like a fighter returning to stance, like a pilot preparing for G-forces. He leaned toward his wife Margaret and whispered, barely moving his lips, "Watch the flight attendant. Something's not right." Margaret gave him a confused look, but said nothing. Webb kept watching. The scarred man's name was Victor Kozlov, though his associates called him Stone. A fitting name for a man who had killed his first target at 17 and never looked back. Former Spetsnaz, discharged for excessive brutality, which in the Russian Special Forces took considerable effort to achieve. For the past 5 years, he had worked as a contractor for people who paid well and asked no questions. Today's employers had paid very well indeed. "Get up!" Stone sneered at the flight attendant, grabbing her arm and yanking her to her feet. "And get me coffee. Black. That's all women like you are good for." Sierra Cole lowered her gaze to the floor. "Yes, sir." Her voice was small, trembling. "Perfect." Stone released her with a shove and turned to address the passengers. His partners had completed their positions. Gregor, the technical specialist, stood at the rear galley, with a blade pressed against a passenger's throat as a warning. Kessler, the youngest of the three, had forced entry to the cockpit through an elaborate ruse involving a fake medical emergency. The pilots were neutralized. The passengers were terrified. The aircraft was theirs. "Listen carefully," Stone announced, pacing down the center aisle like a general inspecting defeated troops. "This aircraft is now under our control. You will remain seated. You will remain silent. You will do exactly as we say." He paused for effect, letting the words sink into frightened minds. "And in 4 hours you will all walk off this plane in Havana, alive and well." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Cuba. Political asylum. Ransom, probably. The passengers exchanged terrified glances, each one calculating their odds of survival. "Anyone who interferes," Stone continued, stopping beside the elderly woman with the rosary, "will be made an example of." He leaned down, his scarred face inches from hers. "Are we clear?" 183 heads nodded in terrified unison, all except one. In row 3 of first class, Senator William Bradford of Montana was processing the situation with the cold calculus of a career politician. 64 years old, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, a man who had survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 congressional investigations, and a particularly vicious primary challenge. He was not a man who frightened easily. "Now listen here," the senator said, rising to his feet despite the blade Gregor pressed against a nearby passenger's throat. "I am a United States Senator. Whatever you want, I can arrange." Stone's fist connected with Bradford's jaw before he could finish the sentence. The senator crumpled back into his leather seat, stars exploding behind his eyes. Blood trickled from a split lip. His expensive suit would need dry cleaning, assuming he survived long enough to worry about such things. "Anyone else want to introduce themselves?" Stone asked pleasantly. Silence. "Good." He turned toward the galley where Sierra Cole stood frozen like a deer caught in headlights. "You. Coffee. Now." "Yes, sir." She moved toward the galley with the shuffling gait of someone who had been thoroughly broken. Head down, shoulders hunched. The picture of submission. She passed row 8 where a pregnant woman sat clutching her swollen belly with both hands. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. The name on her boarding pass was Vivian Hartley, 7 months along. Due in late October, she was supposed to be visiting her mother in Seattle for a baby shower. Now she wondered if she would ever see her mother again. Without breaking stride, Sierra's hand brushed Vivian's shoulder as she passed, a gesture so subtle that no one noticed. But Vivian felt it. A squeeze. Brief but firm. A message transmitted through touch alone. "I see you. Hold on." Then the flight attendant was gone, disappearing into the galley to make coffee for the man who had thrown her to the ground. In the galley, Sierra's hands moved with automatic precision. She had made this coffee 1,000 times. 10,000 times. 4 years of pushing beverage carts, smiling at rude passengers, pretending that her past didn't exist. Her fingers found the emergency equipment locker as she worked. Fire extinguisher, first aid kit, defibrillator, plastic utensils. Nothing useful as a weapon. Not yet. She opened the overhead compartment where crew bags were stored and retrieved her own. A small black duffel with the airline logo. Inside, beneath her change of clothes and makeup kit, lay a dog-eared paperback. chess strategy for beginners. The margins were filled with handwritten notes, notes that had nothing to do with chess, egress points, timing calculations, equations that looked more like mission planning than game theory. Old habits died hard. She closed the bag and returned to her task. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed. Steam rose in lazy spirals, and Sierra Cole waited. Colonel Marcus Webb could not stop watching her. It was unprofessional, he knew. Borderline obsessive, his wife Margaret would have said if she had noticed his attention wandering from the crisis at hand. But 18 years in the Air Force had taught him to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Not wrong in the sense of the hijacking. That was obviously wrong. 3 armed men had taken control of a commercial aircraft, and everyone aboard was now a hostage to their demands. But something else. Something about that flight attendant. He watched as she returned from the galley carrying a cup of black coffee. Her movements were efficient, controlled. She kept her eyes down her shoulders, slumped every inch the traumatized victim. But her feet told a different story. Heel toe, weight perfectly centered with each step. Not the mincing steps of someone in airline-mandated low heels. The confident stride of someone accustomed to maintaining balance in unstable environments. Like a fighter jet pulling 7 Gs in a combat turn. Webb's attention shifted to her wrist. A watch. Black, bulky, functional rather than decorative. A G-Shock aviator. Scuffed and scratched in patterns that suggested years of hard use. The crystal was nicked in 3 places. The band was worn almost white at the edges. Webb owned the same watch. Had worn the same watch for 15 years until Margaret bought him a nicer one for their anniversary. Every pilot he knew owned some version of that watch. It was standard military aviator equipment, not the kind of accessory a customer service worker from Phoenix would typically own. His eyes narrowed. His mind raced. The pieces refused to fit together in any way that made sense. Marcus, Margaret's whisper broke his concentration. What is it you keep staring at that woman? Nothing. He forced his eyes back to his lap. Just thinking. But he wasn't thinking about nothing. He was thinking about the way she walked, the way she fell, the watch on her wrist, the steadiness of her hands. And he was starting to form a theory that seemed absolutely insane. The next 30 minutes settled into a tense routine. Stone remained in the galley drinking coffee and monitoring communications through the aircraft's satellite phone. He had already made contact with the outside world. The FBI was aware of the situation. Negotiations were underway, a dance as old as hijacking itself. Gregor patrolled the main cabin with the methodical precision of a shark circling prey. His eyes missed nothing, every nervous twitch, every whispered word. Every passenger who looked like they might be thinking about heroics. Kessler stayed in the cockpit, keeping First Officer Daniels under constant surveillance. Captain Morris remained unconscious, blood seeping from a gash above his left eye, where Kessler had struck him during the takeover. The autopilot held steady. The aircraft flew on, and Sierra Cole served drinks. She moved through the cabin with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had performed this task thousands of times, which she had. 4 years of this life, 4 years of hiding, 4 years of pretending to be someone she was not. She reflected the perfect cover. No one looked twice at flight attendants. They were part of the scenery like the safety cards in the seat back pockets or the tiny packages of peanuts that no one actually wanted. Invisible, forgettable, exactly as she intended. In row 8, Vivian Hartley was struggling to control her breathing. The baby was kicking hard, insistent kicks that felt like Morse code from the womb. I'm scared too, Mom. Get us out of here. Sierra appeared beside her, offering a plastic cup of water. Here, drink slowly. Vivian's hands trembled as she accepted the cup. Thank you. I don't know what to do. Breathe. Sierra's voice was barely above a whisper, soft enough that the hijackers wouldn't hear, but firm enough to cut through Vivian's panic. In through your nose, out through your mouth. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Focus on the breathing, nothing else. The instruction was specific, practiced, the kind of thing a flight attendant might learn in basic training. or the kind of thing a combat pilot learned to manage stress during high-G maneuvers. How do you stay so calm? Vivian asked, genuinely bewildered. How can you be so calm when all of this is happening? Sierra's steady gaze met hers. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in their depths. Not fear, not submission. Something harder. Something forged in fires that Vivian could not imagine. Practice, Sierra said. And then she was gone, moving to the next passenger, the next need, the next opportunity to observe and plan. Gregor was growing suspicious. He stood at the rear of the cabin watching the flight attendant work, and something gnawed at the edges of his professional paranoia. Gregor had spent 15 years in the demolition business, first for a Baltic government that no longer existed then, for whoever paid the highest price. He appeared on no fewer than 7 international watch lists under various aliases. He had survived 3 separate assassination attempts. Men like Gregor developed instincts, and his instincts were telling him that something was wrong with this woman. He approached her as she restocked the beverage cart. His movement was casual, but his eyes were anything but. "What is your name?" Sierra kept her gaze lowered. "Sierra Cole, sir." "How long have you been a flight attendant?" 4 years, sir." "What did you do before?" A hesitation, brief, almost imperceptible. "Customer service. Call center in Phoenix." Gregor studied her face, looking for the telltale signs of deception. Dilated pupils, rapid blinking, micro-expressions of fear masked by false calm. He found none of them, but he did notice something else. Her hands. She was restocking cups, arranging napkins, performing the mundane tasks of her profession. Normal activities for a normal person in an abnormal situation. But her hands weren't shaking. Gregor had seen hundreds of people react to violence in his career. Soldiers, civilians, trained operatives, and innocent bystanders. Adrenaline affected them all the same way. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, and trembling hands. Fine motor control became nearly impossible when the body's fight-or-flight response kicked in. This woman's hands were rock solid. She had been thrown to the ground, threatened, humiliated. She should be a trembling wreck right now. Instead, she was calmly arranging plastic cups like nothing had happened. "Show me your hands." Sierra extended her hands, palms up. Gregor examined them closely. Smooth skin, manicured nails, no obvious calluses. "Wait." He looked closer. There at the base of her fingers, faint discoloration. The kind of marks that came from gripping something repeatedly. Something like a control stick. "What is this?" "I work out sometimes. Gym equipment." Gregor's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her. But he couldn't prove anything, and Stone was waiting for his report. "Stay where I can see you," he said finally. "And don't cause problems." "Yes, sir." He walked away, but the suspicion remained. He would be watching this one closely. Very closely. In row 12, Colonel Webb had seen the entire exchange. The way Gregor had examined her hands, the questions about her past, the barely concealed suspicion in the hijacker's eyes. He wasn't the only one who had noticed something different about the flight attendant. Webb made a decision. When Sierra passed his row again, he caught her attention. A subtle gesture, a raised eyebrow, an invitation. She paused beside him, pretending to check on passengers. "Colonel Webb," she said softly, barely moving her lips. "I saw your service pin earlier. Air Force. 18 years, Technical Sergeant, Nellis Air Force Base. F-16 maintenance." His eyes widened slightly. "How did you know the calluses on your hands, the way you sit, the watch you used to wear before your wife bought you a nicer one?" She glanced at his wrist where a faint tan line marked where his G-Shock used to be. "We recognize our own." The statement hung in the air between them. We recognize our own. Webb's heart rate spiked. His theory wasn't insane after all. This woman was military, had to be. No civilian would notice those details. No civilian would phrase it that way. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Someone who can help. But not yet. The timing has to be right." "What do you need from me?" Sierra's eyes swept the cabin, once checking the hijackers' positions. Stone was still in the galley. Gregor was at the rear. Kessler remained in the cockpit. When things start happening, keep your wife's head down. Don't interfere no matter what you see. And if you believe in God, start praying. She pressed something into his palm. A small piece of paper folded tight. Don't read it now. Wait until I'm gone. Then she was moving again, continuing down the aisle, her mask firmly back in place. Webb waited until she had passed 3 more rows before unfolding the paper beneath his tray table. 4 words, neat handwriting, precise letters. When I move, duck. He folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, his mind racing with questions that had no answers. Who was she? What was she planning? And what the hell did she mean by, when I move? The moment came without warning. Kessler emerged from the cockpit, his young face flushed with the excitement of power. He was the youngest of the 3 hijackers, mid-20s, with the restless energy of someone who enjoyed violence for its own sake. His pupils were dilated. His movements were jerky. Whatever he was on, it was making him unpredictable. The autopilot is stable, he reported to Stone. The co-pilot is cooperating. The captain is still unconscious but breathing. Stone nodded. Good, maintain position. But Kessler wasn't ready to return to the cockpit. His eyes were scanning the cabin, looking for entertainment, looking for prey. They settled on row 6, on an 8-year-old boy named Cody. The child had been remarkably brave throughout the ordeal. He sat clutching a stuffed dinosaur, a green T-Rex that had seen better days. His mother held him close, whispering reassurances that neither of them believed. Cody wasn't crying. He had stopped crying 30 minutes ago when the fear became too big for tears. Now he just sat there hiccuping occasionally, trying to be brave like the heroes in his favorite movies. Kessler saw weakness. That one's annoying me, he said, pointing at the boy. The sniffling. Make it stop. Cody's mother wrapped her arms around him protectively. Please, he's just scared. He'll be quiet, I promise. Kessler moved toward them with the predatory grace of a cat approaching a cornered mouse. His ceramic blade caught the light as he drew it from his belt. I don't like promises. I like results. Please, leave him alone. The voice came from behind Kessler, soft but with an edge that hadn't been there before. He turned to find Sierra Cole standing in the aisle blocking his path. She was still small, still wearing the stained uniform, still projecting the body language of a terrified service worker. But something had shifted. What did you say to me? I said leave him alone. Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. He's a child. He can't control his fear. Kessler stared at her with genuine amusement. Was this tiny woman actually standing up to him after everything she had seen, after being thrown to the ground like garbage? And you think you can tell me what to do? No, sir. She lowered her gaze again, the defiance vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. He's only a little boy. If you want someone to yell at me. Kessler studied her for a long moment. In his experience, the line between bravery and stupidity was often non-existent. You've got some nerve, I'll give you that. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. His breath washed over her face, stale coffee and something chemical. Amphetamines, probably. His eyes were wild, unstable. Most people don't talk back to me. You know what happens to people who talk back to me? Sierra said nothing. They get hurt. Still nothing. Kessler's hand shot out and grabbed her collar, pulling her face close to his. She could smell the sweat on him, the eagerness. He wanted her to fight back, wanted an excuse. I could hurt you right now, he whispered. I could hurt you so badly you'd beg me to stop. And no one on this plane would do a thing about it. You know why? Sierra's voice was steady, quiet. Because they're afraid. Because they know their place. He released her with a shove that sent her stumbling backward. She caught herself on a seat back, maintaining her balance with a grace that seemed almost unconscious. Now get back to work, and if I hear another word out of you, I'll make sure you're the first one off this plane. He turned back toward the cockpit, still hungry for a target but temporarily satisfied by the display of dominance. Behind him, the passengers let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they'd been holding. In row 12, Colonel Webb's hands were shaking, not with fear, with recognition. He had seen what just happened, the way Sierra had drawn Kessler's attention away from the child. The way she had absorbed his aggression, redirected it, neutralized it, without ever throwing a punch. That wasn't the instinct of a flight attendant protecting a passenger. That was tactical sacrifice, a soldier's move. He squeezed Margaret's hand. "When I tell you to duck," he whispered, "you duck. No questions, no hesitation. Just get your head down and don't look up until I say it's safe." Margaret's eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" "Just promise me, Margaret. Promise me." She searched his face for answers he couldn't give her. Then slowly she nodded. "I promise." Webb turned his attention back to the flight attendant, who wasn't a flight attendant. Whatever she was planning, it was going to happen soon. He could feel it. The turbulence hit without warning, a pocket of rough air that shook the aircraft like a giant's toy. Passengers screamed. Overhead bins rattled. Gregor stumbled against a seat back, dropping his ceramic blade. It clattered to the floor and skittered under a seat. But Sierra Cole didn't move. While everyone else was thrown off balance, she remained standing in the aisle. Her knees were slightly bent. Her body absorbed the motion with the practiced ease of someone who had spent thousands of hours in unstable flight conditions. The same way a pilot would brace in a fighter jet during combat maneuvers. The same way Colonel Webb himself had learned to stand during his 18 years working on flight lines. Their eyes met across the cabin. The former Air Force sergeant and the mystery in a flight attendant's uniform. And in that moment, Webb saw something that made his blood run cold. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even concerned. If anything, she looked calculating, patient, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Webb gave her an almost imperceptible nod. "I see you. I understand. I'm ready." Sierra's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes acknowledged him. Then the turbulence passed and the normal rhythm of the hijacking resumed. Stone barked orders from the galley. Gregor retrieved his blade and resumed his patrol. Kessler sulked near the cockpit door, and Sierra continued serving drinks as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. An alliance had been formed. A plan was taking shape, and the clock was ticking. The satellite phone crackled in Stone's hand. Yes, we have control. No complications." He listened for a long moment, his scarred face betraying nothing. 183 passengers plus crew. The senior senator from Montana is aboard. Additional leverage if needed. Another pause. 50 million in cryptocurrency. Routed through the accounts we specified. Safe passage to Havana for myself and my associates. You have 3 hours. He disconnected and turned to Gregor, who had been listening from the galley entrance. "Negotiations are underway. FBI is expected. Any problems?" "They want proof of life. Video of the passengers showing everyone is unharmed." Gregor nodded. "I'll handle it." "Use the girl." Stone gestured toward Sierra, who was refilling the coffee maker. "She photographs well. Submissive, scared. Exactly what they need to see." "Understood." Sierra's hands never stopped moving as she listened. 50 million. 3 hours. Havana. The FBI would stall. They always did. Negotiate. Delay. Run psychological profiles. Try to wear down the hijackers through exhaustion and uncertainty. But these three weren't amateurs. Their coordination suggested professional training. Their demands were specific and achievable. Their willingness to use violence had already been demonstrated. They would not be talked down, which meant that sometime in the next 3 hours, someone on this aircraft would have to act. Gregor approached her with a smartphone, one of the devices he had confiscated from passengers earlier. We're recording a message for the authorities. You will read exactly what I tell you." "Yes, sir." He positioned her in front of the galley curtain, angling the phone to capture her face and the rows of terrified passengers behind her. "Say this. This is Sierra Cole, flight attendant on United Flight 1147. The aircraft has been taken by 3 armed men. All passengers are currently unharmed, but they will be executed one by one if our demands are not met. For the safety of everyone on board, please comply immediately." Sierra looked into the camera. Her face was pale, her eyes downcast, the picture of traumatized compliance. "This is Sierra Cole," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Flight attendant on United Flight 1147. The aircraft has been taken by 3 armed men." She paused as if gathering courage. All passengers are currently unharmed, but they will be... A tear rolled down her cheek. Perfect. Convincing. They will be executed one by one if our demands are not met. For the safety of everyone on board, please comply immediately. Gregor stopped recording, satisfied with the performance. Good. Very convincing. He walked away to transmit the video, leaving Sierra alone in the galley. The tear had been real, but not for the reasons Gregor assumed. It was a tear of frustration, of rage carefully bottled and suppressed. Because in her 4 years of hiding, of pretending to be someone she was not, this was the moment she had dreaded most. The moment when violence erupted around her and she was forced to choose. She thought of Cody, the 8-year-old boy in row 6, clutching his stuffed dinosaur and trying so hard to be brave. She thought of Vivian, 7 months pregnant, whose baby would never see the world if this flight ended in disaster. She thought of Dot Warren, the senior flight attendant, who had taken Sierra under her wing 4 years ago, never suspecting that her quiet protege could disassemble and reassemble an M4 carbine blindfolded in under 30 seconds. And she thought of the promise she had made to herself when she left the Air Force. No more violence, no more killing. Whatever it takes, I will live a normal life. But some promises were made to be broken. In the back of the galley, hidden from view, Sierra closed her eyes, and she remembered. Afghanistan, 5 years ago. A perfect blue sky stretching from horizon to horizon. The Hindu Kush mountains rising like giants in the distance. 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons cutting through the air at 400 knots. Sierra flew lead position. Maya Brennan flew her wing. They had been partners for 3 years by then, had flown more than 200 combat missions together, had earned matching call signs because their coordination was so seamless, they seemed to share one mind. Phantom and Wildcat, the deadliest duo in the squadron. Beautiful day for flying, Maya's voice crackled through the radio. Almost makes you forget we're in a war zone. Stay focused, Wildcat. Intel says there might be SAM activity in the area. Relax, Phantom. This is a routine patrol. What could possibly go wrong? The radar warning receiver screamed to life, and everything went wrong. Sierra opened her eyes. The memory faded, but the pain remained. A scar that would never fully heal. A wound that had driven her to abandon everything she knew and disappear into a life of anonymity. 4 years of hiding, 4 years of pretending, 4 years of telling herself that she could outrun the person she used to be. But you couldn't outrun who you really were. Sooner or later, the past always caught up. She looked at her reflection in the polished metal of the coffee maker. A tired woman in a stained uniform stared back at her. Dark hair escaping from its bun. Eyes that had seen too much. A face that had learned to show nothing. Behind that face was someone else entirely. Major Sierra Cole, United States Air Force, call sign Phantom, 3 silver stars, Distinguished Flying Cross, 1,700 combat flight hours, the most decorated female combat pilot of her generation, and she was done hiding. The galley curtain rustled. Kessler appeared in the entrance, his eyes bright with malicious intent. You, Stone wants more coffee. Yes, sir. And when you're done with that, come find me. I've decided I'm not finished with you yet. He smiled, a predator's smile, full of promise and threat. We're going to have a little conversation, just you and me, about respect, about knowing your place. He turned and walked away, leaving the threat hanging in the air like poison. Sierra watched him go. In a different life, in a different world, she might have been afraid, might have trembled at the promise of violence in his eyes, might have played the victim and prayed for rescue. But that was the old Sierra, the hiding Sierra, the broken Sierra. This Sierra felt something else entirely. Anticipation. The wait was almost over. The game was about to begin. And these 3 men had no idea what they had awakened. She reached into the emergency medical kit and palmed a small syringe. Sedative. Fast-acting. Enough to drop a full-grown man in seconds. Then she straightened her uniform, composed her features into a mask of frightened submission, and prepared to serve coffee one last time. The pieces were in position. The players had revealed themselves. A retired colonel who saw too much. a pregnant woman fighting for her unborn child, an 8-year-old boy clutching a stuffed dinosaur, a senior flight attendant with a note in her pocket, and a woman who had spent 4 years pretending to be invisible. The mask was about to fall. And when it did, 3 hijackers would learn a lesson that would define the rest of their very short lives. Never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Never corner a predator who has been pretending to be prey. And never ever threaten the innocent in front of someone who has sworn to protect them. The Phantom was about to return, and God help anyone standing in her way. The rebellion came without warning. Tanner, the former Army Ranger in Row 14, had spent the past 90 minutes studying the hijackers, their patterns, their weaknesses, the way Kessler's attention wandered when he got bored, the way Gregor favored his left side when he walked, the way Stone's focus narrowed when he was on the satellite phone. Tanner had served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He had cleared buildings in Fallujah. He had survived an IED that killed 4 members of his squad. He was not the kind of man who sat quietly while evil men threatened innocent people. He had been coordinating in whispered conversations with 5 other passengers, a construction foreman from Dallas, 2 college football players traveling together, a retired Marine who had to be pushing 70 but still had the eyes of a killer, and a gym owner whose arms were bigger than most men's thighs. 6 men against 3, not great odds, but better than waiting to die. The signal was simple. When Tanner coughed twice, they would move, overwhelm the hijackers through sheer numbers, accept casualties if necessary, fight or die trying. Tanner watched Kessler emerge from the cockpit and walk toward the rear galley. The young hijacker's movements were jerky, unpredictable. Whatever drugs he was on were making him sloppy. Now or never. Tanner coughed once, then twice. Now! He launched himself from his seat and sprinted toward Kessler, covering the distance in 3 seconds flat. Behind him, he heard the others rising. Shouts of surprise, screams of fear, the chaos of desperate action. Kessler turned just as Tanner reached him. The hijacker's eyes went wide. His hand fumbled for his blade. Too slow. Tanner hit him like a freight train, driving him back against the cockpit door with enough force to crack the frame. His hands found Kessler's throat and squeezed. In the main cabin, the construction foreman had tackled Gregor from behind. The 2 college players piled on, trying to pin the hijacker's arms. The retired Marine was moving toward Stone with the measured stride of someone who had done this before. For 3 glorious seconds, it looked like they might actually win. Then everything went wrong. Gregor's blade flashed in the overhead light. The construction foreman screamed as ceramic sliced through his forearm, severing tendons and spraying blood across the seats. He fell back, clutching the wound, his face white with shock. The college players hesitated. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Gregor twisted free and drove his elbow into the first player's face, shattering his nose. The second player caught a knee to the groin and doubled over, gasping. Stone had drawn his pistol. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed cabin, a thunderclap that froze everyone in place. The bullet punched through the ceiling, leaving a hole that whistled with escaping pressure. Enough! Stone's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. The rebellion collapsed as quickly as it had begun. Tanner felt hands grabbing him, pulling him off Kessler. He struggled, but Gregor's blade was at his throat now, the ceramic edge pressing hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. The retired Marine had stopped mid-stride, his hands raised in surrender. The gym owner was on his knees, Kessler's boot on his neck. 6 men, 6 failures, and now consequences. Stone walked slowly down the aisle, his pistol held loosely at his side. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with cold fury. That, he said, was very stupid. He grabbed Tanner by the hair and yanked his head back, exposing his throat to the cabin lights. You thought you could be heroes. You thought you could save everyone. Tanner spat at him, a defiant gesture that earned him a pistol whip across the face. Stars exploded behind his eyes. Blood filled his mouth. Here's what happens now, Stone announced to the cabin. Because of your little rebellion, we're going to have consequences. He pressed the gun against Tanner's temple. Starting with this one. The passengers held their breath. Children buried their faces against their parents. Adults prayed to gods they weren't sure they believed in. This was it. The moment when everything changed. The moment when hope died. And then a voice spoke from the galley entrance. Soft, calm, completely out of place. Wait! Everyone turned. Sierra Cole stood in the aisle, her stained uniform a stark contrast to the blood and chaos around her. Her hands were raised slightly, palms out. Non-threatening. Submissive. Wait, she repeated. Please. Stone's finger tightened on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Something in her voice had caught his attention. Something that didn't fit. What do you want? He was just trying to protect people. Sierra took a small step forward. Her movements were slow, deliberate. He doesn't deserve to die for that. And who exactly are you to tell me what anyone deserves? Nobody. She lowered her eyes. I'm nobody. Just a flight attendant. She paused, seeming to gather courage. But if you need to hurt someone to make a point, hurt me instead. The offer hung in the air for the third time in 2 hours. This small woman offering herself up for others. Kessler had recovered from Tanner's attack. His face was bruised, his ego damaged, his desire for violence stoked to new heights. Let me, he said, his voice thick with anticipation. I owe her one. Stone studied Sierra with renewed interest. 3 times now she had stepped forward. 3 times she had offered herself in place of others. That wasn't normal behavior for a hostage. That wasn't the desperate courage of a civilian pushed past their breaking point. That was something else entirely. Fine, Stone said finally. He released Tanner with a shove that sent him sprawling. Take her to the galley. Do what you want. Kessler grinned. A wolf's grin, full of hunger and cruelty. He grabbed Sierra's arm and began dragging her toward the front of the cabin. The passengers watched in helpless horror, some crying, some looking away, none of them able to do anything but bear witness. But Colonel Webb noticed something that no one else did. As Kessler pulled Sierra past row 12, her free hand brushed against her thigh, and something in her eyes had changed. The fear was gone. In its place, something cold, something calculating, something that made Webb's blood run cold, and his heart soar at the same time. He reached over and pushed Margaret's head down toward her lap. Now, he whispered, keep your head down. Don't look up until I tell you. Margaret obeyed without question. The mask was about to fall, and God help anyone standing in the way. In the depths of Sierra's mind, the memory crashed over her like a wave. Afghanistan. 5 years ago, she and Maya flying wing to wing over the Hindu Kush. The radar warning receiver screaming. The missile tracking. Maya's voice cutting through the chaos. Sierra, it's locked on me. Deploy countermeasures, break left. No good. It's too close. A pause, brief but infinite. Sierra, don't you dare blame yourself. You hear me? This isn't on you. Just tell my mom I love her. Maya, no. But Maya Brennan had already made her choice. Instead of breaking left, she broke right, toward the missile, away from her wingman, drawing death away from the woman she loved like a sister. The explosion was blinding, a ball of orange fire that consumed Maya's aircraft in an instant. Debris scattered across the sky like tears from heaven. Sierra flew circles around the wreckage for 30 minutes, screaming into her radio, refusing to believe what her eyes were telling her. But there was no ejection seat, no parachute, no miracle. Maya Brennan was gone, and Sierra Cole would never be the same. The memory faded as Kessler shoved her through the galley curtain. The space was cramped. Coffee makers and beverage carts crowded the narrow corridor. Emergency equipment lockers lined the walls. The only light came from fluorescent tubes that buzzed faintly overhead. Kessler released her arm and stepped back, blocking the exit. His eyes roamed over her with undisguised hunger. So, he said, cracking his knuckles, you like playing hero. Sierra kept her eyes downcast, her shoulders hunched, every inch the terrified victim. Please, I didn't mean to cause trouble. Too late for that. He stepped closer. You know what your problem is. You don't know your place. Women like you think you're equal, think you can stand up to men, think you matter. He grabbed her collar and pulled her face close to his. His breath washed over her, sour and chemical. You don't matter. You're nothing. You're less than nothing. He released her collar and drew back his hand. Time slowed. Sierra's eyes tracked his movement with crystal clarity. The angle of his arm, the rotation of his shoulder, the split second when his weight shifted forward for the blow. In that moment, she was no longer Sierra Cole, flight attendant. She was no longer the woman who had spent 4 years hiding from her past. She was Major Sierra Cole. Call sign Phantom, 3-time recipient of the Silver Star, 1,700 combat hours, 47 confirmed air-to-air engagements, 0 defeats, and she was done pretending. Her hand shot up and caught his wrist in mid-swing. The grip was iron, unbreakable. Her fingers found the pressure points with practiced precision. Kessler's eyes went wide with shock. Before he could react, she twisted. His body followed, rotating involuntarily to relieve the pressure on his hyperextended joint. His balance collapsed. His feet tangled. Her other hand was already moving. Palm strike to the solar plexus. The air exploded from his lungs. His mouth opened in a silent scream. Her knee came up, hard, fast, into his stomach. He doubled over. Her elbow came down, harder, faster, into the base of his skull. Kessler collapsed to the galley floor like a puppet with its strings cut. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. 1.2 seconds. That's all it took. Sierra stood over him, breathing steadily, her eyes cold and assessing. The mask was gone now, stripped away like a costume that no longer fit. In its place stood something older, harder, forged in fires that would have broken lesser people. She moved quickly, searching Kessler's pockets. Ceramic blade, radio, zip ties. She kept the blade in the ties. The radio she disabled with a quick twist that shattered its internal components. Then she secured Kessler's wrists and ankles with his own restraints. 1 down, 2 to go. The galley curtain rustled. Sierra spun blade in hand, ready for combat. Gregor stood in the entrance. His eyes swept the scene. Kessler unconscious on the floor. Sierra standing over him with a stolen weapon. The truth hit him like a physical blow. What the hell? He lunged forward, his own blade slashing toward her throat. Sierra deflected the strike with her forearm, accepting a shallow cut in exchange for position. Pain flared bright and hot, but she pushed it aside. Pain was just information. It could be processed later. Her counter was immediate. A beverage tray snatched from the cart and hurled at his face. He ducked, but the distraction cost him a precious half-second. She closed the distance before he could recover. Her knee found his solar plexus. Her elbow found his temple. The sequence was similar to what she had done to Kessler, but Gregor was more experienced. He absorbed the blows and kept fighting. His blade caught her side, slicing through her uniform and the skin beneath. More pain, more information to be processed later. She trapped his knife arm against her body and rotated, using his momentum against him. His balance broke. He stumbled. Her palm strike caught him under the chin, snapping his head back. Her follow-up elbow caught him on the way down, driving into his temple with surgical precision. Gregor hit the floor and stayed there. 3.7 seconds. 2 down. 1 to go. But Stone had heard the commotion. He appeared at the galley entrance before Sierra could secure Gregor's restraints. His pistol was drawn. His eyes took in the scene with the cold calculation of a professional killer. 2 of his men down, a flight attendant standing over them with blood on her hands and steel in her eyes. "Well," he said softly, "I knew there was something about you." Sierra faced him. Blood dripped from the cut on her forearm. More blood seeped from the wound in her side. She held Kessler's ceramic blade in a reverse grip, the edge angled for a quick strike. "Who are you really?" Stone asked. "Military, CIA." "Does it matter?" "Not particularly." He raised the gun. "You're still going to die." "Maybe." Her voice was calm, steady. "But not today." Stone's finger tightened on the trigger. Then his satellite phone buzzed. The sound cut through the tension like a knife. Stone's eyes flickered to the phone on his belt. Just for a moment. Just long enough for doubt to creep in. He answered with his free hand, the gun still trained on Sierra. "What?" A voice from the phone. Deep, accented, cold enough to freeze blood in veins. "Victor, report." Stone's expression shifted. Something between respect and fear. "We have a situation. One of the hostages is not what she appears to be. Static. Then the voice again. Describe her. Small, dark hair, gray eyes. She just neutralized Kessler and Gregor in seconds. A long pause. When the voice spoke again, there was something new in it. Interest, recognition, hunger. Phantom. Sierra's blood turned to ice. That voice. She knew that voice. Had heard it in her nightmares for 5 years. The voice of the man who had provided the missile that killed Maya. The voice she had sworn she would silence forever. Shadow Wolf. Victor, the voice continued, do not kill her. I want her alive. She is the reason for all of this. Stone's eyes narrowed. The hijacking was for her. From the beginning, the flight, the timing, everything was designed to draw her out, to test her, to see if the legends were true. Sierra's mind raced. The hijacking wasn't random. They had known she would be on this flight. Someone had told them. Someone had betrayed her. Again. Bring her to me breathing, Shadow Wolf continued, and I will triple your payment. Kill her, and I will triple your suffering. Am I clear? Crystal. The line went dead. Stone lowered the gun slightly, not pointing at the floor, but no longer aimed at her center mass. His expression had shifted from predatory to calculating. So, you're the one he's been hunting. Sierra said nothing. Shadow Wolf has been planning this for months, tracking your flight schedules, your work patterns, waiting for the right opportunity. Stone almost smiled. And here I thought we were just hijacking a plane for money. What does he want with me? That's between you and him. My job is just to deliver you. Sierra's grip tightened on the blade. Her mind ran through options. Stone was 4 meters away, close enough to reach before he could fire, but only if she moved perfectly. Only if he made a mistake. He wasn't going to make a mistake. Put down the knife, Stone said. Come quietly and no one else gets hurt. And if I don't, then I start shooting passengers, one every 30 seconds until you comply. He meant it. She could see it in his eyes. He would kill innocent people without hesitation if it served his purpose. But he had made one miscalculation. He thought she was out of options. There's something you should know, Sierra said. What's that? I palmed a syringe from the medical kit while I was making your coffee this morning. Stone's eyes widened. He looked down. The needle was already in his neck. She had closed the distance while he was focused on the phone, had injected the sedative while he was distracted by Shadow Wolf's instructions. The pistol wavered in his hand. Sedative, Sierra said calmly. Fast acting. You'll be unconscious in about 3 seconds. Stone tried to raise the gun. His arm wouldn't cooperate. 2 seconds. His knees buckled. 1. He hit the floor. And just like that, it was over. Sierra stood in the galley surrounded by 3 unconscious hijackers. Her uniform was torn and bloodied. The cut on her forearm was bleeding steadily. The wound in her side throbbed with every heartbeat, but she was alive, and the passengers were safe, for now. The galley curtain flew open. Dot Warren stood there, her eyes wide with shock. Behind her, Colonel Webb pushed forward, his face a mixture of awe and vindication. Holy Mother of God, Dot breathed. I knew it. I knew there was something different about you. Dot, Sierra's voice was calm despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. I need you to listen carefully. Go to the passengers. Tell them everything is under control. Keep them in their seats and calm. Can you do that? Dot nodded automatically. What about you? I need to fly this plane. Webb stepped forward, holding up the small piece of paper she had given him earlier. When I moved duck, he said quietly, I should have known those weren't the words of a flight attendant. Sierra met his eyes. Thank you for trusting me, Colonel. Thank you for being worth trusting. He glanced at the 3 unconscious men. What do you need from me? Keep the cabin secure. If any of these 3 wake up, do not let them move. And if you have any medical training, the construction foreman in the back needs attention. Gregor cut him pretty badly during the rebellion. Understood. Webb straightened to attention, the reflex of a lifetime of service. Phantom, Damascus Raid, 3 silver stars. I know who you are. I knew the moment I saw you fall. Then you know what happens next. Yes, ma'am. He turned back toward the cabin. Give them hell. Sierra pushed past them and moved toward the cockpit. First Officer Daniels sat rigid at the controls, his wrists still raw from the zip ties that had bound him. Captain Morris lay slumped in his seat, unconscious but breathing. Blood had dried on his forehead from the gash Kessler had given him during the takeover. Daniels spun around as the door opened, his face pale with fear. What? What just happened out there? Change of management. Sierra produced Kessler's blade and cut his restraints. How's the captain? Concussion, I think. He's been in and out. Daniels rubbed his wrist, wincing. Who the hell are you? Sierra didn't answer. She was already sliding into the captain's seat, her hands moving across the instrument panel with the familiarity of long practice. Altitude 34,000 feet, heading 270, airspeed 412 knots, fuel 2 hours 15 minutes remaining, autopilot engaged. Everything she needed to know processed in 3 seconds. She reached for the radio. Seattle Tacoma Control, this is United Flight 1147, requesting priority landing. We have a medical emergency and a security situation that has been resolved. Requesting emergency services on standby. Static, then a voice. United 1147, confirm your situation. We show you as a hijacked aircraft. Hijacking has been neutralized. 3 suspects in custody. Multiple injuries requiring medical attention. Requesting immediate priority handling. A pause. The controller processing information that didn't fit any of his training scenarios. United 1147, confirm identity of person making this transmission. Sierra's hands tightened on the yoke. 4 years. 4 years of hiding. 4 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. 4 years of running from the ghosts that haunted her sleep. It was time to stop running. This is Major Sierra Cole, United States Air Force, retired, service number 773426, call sign Phantom. She took a breath. I have assumed control of this aircraft and am requesting permission to land. The silence on the radio stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then a new voice came through, older, more authoritative, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. Phantom, is that really you? Sierra closed her eyes for just a moment. General Harrison, it's been a while. 4 years. The general's voice was thick with emotion. We thought, never mind what we thought. Can you land that aircraft? Sierra opened her eyes and looked at the instrument panel, then at the clouds streaming past the windscreen, then at her own hands steady as stone on the controls. Sir, I've landed F-16s on carrier decks in the middle of typhoons. I think I can handle a 737. A sound that might have been a laugh came through the radio, or it might have been a sob. Copy that, Phantom. You are cleared for priority landing. Runway 16 right. Emergency services will be waiting. A pause. And Phantom, sir, welcome back. The words hung in the air as Sierra adjusted the heading and began the descent sequence. Behind her, First Officer Daniels was staring with an expression that combined awe, confusion, and the dawning realization that he had just witnessed something that would define the rest of his career. Major Cole, he finally managed. As in the Major Cole, the one who flew the Damascus raid. Focus on the approach, Lieutenant. She glanced at his insignia. You do still remember how to fly, correct? Yes, ma'am. He snapped to attention automatically. What do you need but on monitor systems? Keep me informed of any anomalies. And when we land, help coordinate passenger evacuation. What about the hijackers? FBI will handle them. Our job is to get everyone on the ground safely. She turned back to the controls. Through the cockpit window, the clouds stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere below, Seattle waited. Safety waited. A new chapter waited. But Sierra's mind kept returning to that voice on the phone. Shadow Wolf. He had orchestrated all of this. The hijacking. The threat. Everything designed to draw her out. To test her. To confirm that the legends were true. Why? What did he want with her? And how had he known she would be on this flight? Someone had betrayed her. Someone with access to her work schedule. Someone who had been feeding information to Shadow Wolf for months. Maybe longer. Maybe all the way back to Afghanistan. Maybe all the way back to Maya. The questions burned in her mind, but she pushed them aside. There would be time for answers later, time for hunting, time for the reckoning that had been building for 5 years. Right now, 183 passengers were counting on her, and she would not let them down. In the main cabin, Dot Warren was making her announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation has been resolved. Please remain in your seats and stay calm. We will be landing shortly. The passengers exchanged bewildered looks. Resolved how, by whom? The whispered conversations spread like wildfire. The flight attendant did it. What flight attendant? The small one. Sierra. She took them all down. That's impossible. I saw her. She moved like something out of a movie. Who is she? In row 8, Vivian Hartley clutched her belly and wept with relief. Her baby kicked against her palms as if celebrating their survival. In row 6, Cody hugged his stuffed dinosaur and asked his mother a question. Mama, is the flight attendant lady a superhero? His mother, still processing her own shock, could only manage one word. Yes. In row 3, Senator Bradford sat in stunned silence, his aching jaw forgotten. He had spent 30 years in politics, had witnessed countless displays of power and courage, but he had never seen anything like what had just happened. A flight attendant, a goddamn flight attendant, had neutralized 3 armed hijackers in the time it took to pour a cup of coffee. The world, he realized, was far stranger than he had ever imagined. In row 14, Tanner the Army Ranger sat with his head in his hands. Blood still dripped from his split lip. His ribs ached from Gregor's kicks. But he was smiling. He had recognized those moves, had seen them in training at Fort Bragg, had practiced them himself during his years in the service. Combat techniques, close quarters battle, the kind of skills that took years to master and seconds to deploy. Whoever that woman was, she wasn't just a hero. She was a warrior, and Tanner was proud to have shared a battlefield with her, even if he hadn't known it at the time. Colonel Webb returned to his seat beside Margaret. What happened? She whispered. What's going on? We're safe. He took her hand and squeezed. We're going to be okay. But how? Who stopped them? Webb looked toward the cockpit door behind which a legend was bringing them home. Someone remarkable, he said. Someone who spent 4 years pretending to be invisible. Someone who gave up everything to protect strangers she'd never met. Margaret followed his gaze. The flight attendant. She's not a flight attendant, Margaret. His voice dropped to a whisper. She's a ghost. She's the Phantom. The descent took 47 minutes. 47 minutes during which Major Sierra Cole guided the Boeing 737 through weather traffic and the chaos of emergency protocols with the same cool precision she had once used to guide missiles onto enemy targets. First Officer Daniels watched in silence, learning more in those 47 minutes than he had in years of simulator training. The way she anticipated turbulence before it hit, the way she adjusted for crosswinds without consulting instruments, the way she communicated with air traffic control in that calm, clipped cadence that pilots used when lives depended on every word. Flaps 15, she announced. He complied without question. Gear down. The landing gear deployed with a mechanical thunk. Runway visual. Beginning final approach. Through the cockpit window, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport spread beneath them, a grid of concrete and lights that represented safety, civilization, the end of a nightmare. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their lights flashing red and blue in the afternoon sun. United 1147, you are cleared to land, air traffic control announced. Emergency services standing by. Welcome home. Sierra didn't respond. Her entire focus was on the approach. Angle, speed, drift. All the 1,000 tiny variables that separated a good landing from a catastrophic one. The wheels touched down with barely a bump. Reverse thrust engaged. The aircraft slowed, rolling toward the designated gate where a small army of emergency responders waited. Only then did Sierra allow herself a single deep breath. It was over. 183 passengers were safe. 3 hijackers were in custody, and somewhere out there Shadow Wolf was watching, waiting, planning his next move. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today the Phantom had returned, and she wasn't going anywhere. End of part 2. The nightmare was over. The plane was on the ground. The passengers were safe. But for Sierra Cole, the real battle was just beginning. Shadow Wolf had revealed himself. The man who killed Maya Brennan was still out there, still planning, still hunting. And now he knew exactly where to find her. The aircraft rolled to a stop at Gate B7. Through the cockpit window, Sierra could see the assembled response team. FBI agents in tactical gear formed a perimeter around the jetway. Paramedics stood ready with stretchers and medical equipment. Airport security officers kept the growing crowd of media and onlookers at bay. Television news helicopters circled overhead. Like mechanical vultures, their cameras broadcasting every moment to millions of viewers across the country. And at the front of the crowd, standing apart from the chaos, was a figure Sierra would recognize anywhere. General Marcus Harrison, United States Air Force. 3 silver stars gleaming on his shoulder boards. 63 years old. Silver hair cropped close to his skull. The ramrod posture of a career military officer who had never learned how to relax. He had been her commanding officer during the Syria campaign. The man who had pinned her silver stars to her chest. The man who had written the recommendation for her Distinguished Flying Cross. The man who had tried to talk her out of resigning when she announced her intention to leave the service. 4 years since she had seen him last. 4 years since she had walked away from everything she knew. And now he was waiting on the tarmac, watching her through the cockpit glass with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Ma'am," First Officer Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts. "The passengers are ready to deplane." Sierra nodded slowly. "Begin evacuation. Injured first, then families with children, then everyone else. Coordinate with the FBI for the hijackers." "Yes, ma'am." He hesitated. "Major Cole, thank you. For everything." She didn't respond. There would be time for thanks later. Time for debriefings and interviews and all the bureaucratic machinery that followed events like this. Right now, she had to face the man waiting on the tarmac. The cabin door opened to a wall of flashing cameras and shouting voices. FBI agents pushed forward to secure the aircraft. Paramedics rushed toward the injured. The construction foreman with a slashed arm. Captain Morris on a stretcher, still groggy from his concussion. A few passengers suffering from panic attacks and shock. And through it all, 183 people filed off the aircraft in a daze. Many of them craning their necks to catch one more glimpse of the woman who had saved their lives. Vivian Hartley paused at the top of the stairs, her hands cradling her pregnant belly. Tears streamed down her face as she looked back toward the cockpit. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Then she was gone, guided down the stairs by a paramedic who kept one hand on her elbow and the other on his radio. Cody came next, still clutching his stuffed dinosaur. His mother held his hand so tightly her knuckles were white. But Cody wasn't scared anymore. He was looking around with wide eyes, searching for something, someone. "Mama, where's the superhero lady? I want to say goodbye." "She's busy, sweetheart. She has important things to do. But I want to tell her thank you." His mother's eyes glistened. "I know, baby. I know." Senator Bradford walked past without a word. His expensive suit was rumpled, his jaw still swollen from Stone's punch. He would hold a press conference within the hour, positioning himself as a calm voice of leadership during the crisis. He would mention Sierra Cole exactly once in passing before pivoting to his own heroic composure under pressure. Politicians never changed. Colonel Webb was among the last to deplane. He paused at the cabin door and looked back toward the cockpit. Sierra stood in the doorway watching him. Their eyes met. Webb straightened to attention and raised his hand in a perfect salute. A sergeant saluting a major, a maintainer honoring a pilot, a veteran recognizing a warrior. Sierra returned the salute. No words were necessary. Then Webb was gone, his arm around Margaret, disappearing into the crowd of survivors and first responders. Sierra was the last person to leave the aircraft. She stood in the doorway for a moment, silhouetted against the cabin lights. Her uniform was torn and bloodied. Her dark hair had escaped from its regulation bun and hung in tangled strands around her face. The bandage on her forearm was soaked through with red. The wound in her side throbbed with every heartbeat. She didn't look like a hero. She looked like a survivor. She descended the stairs slowly each step, taking her closer to the life she had left behind. The cameras tracked her every movement. The shouting of reporters grew louder with each step. Major Cole! Major Cole! Can you tell us what happened? Is it true you're a decorated combat pilot? Why were you working as a flight attendant? How did you take down 3 armed hijackers? She ignored them all. Her eyes were fixed on General Harrison. He stood at the base of the stairs, his silver stars catching the afternoon sun. His face was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed him. They were bright with emotion, pride, relief, and something that looked almost like regret. Sierra stopped 3 feet away from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then General Harrison did something that made every camera flash in unison. He snapped to attention. Full military bearing, chin up, shoulders back, chest out. The perfect posture of a man who had spent 40 years serving his country. And he raised his right hand in a salute. A 3-star general saluting a major. The gesture broke every protocol in the book. Generals didn't salute majors. It was supposed to work the other way around. But some moments transcended protocol. Sierra's hand came up automatically. The muscle memory of 1,000 repetitions. Her form was perfect despite the blood on her fingers and the exhaustion in her bones. Welcome back, Phantom. I never left, sir. Her voice caught slightly. Not really. Harrison lowered his salute and she lowered hers. And for just a moment, they were no longer a general and a major. They were 2 soldiers who had seen too much and carried burdens that civilians would never understand. Then Harrison stepped aside, gesturing toward a black military vehicle waiting beyond the security perimeter. We need to talk, somewhere private. Sierra looked at the vehicle, then at the crowd of reporters, then at the passengers who were still streaming off the aircraft, many of them pausing to look back at her with expressions of gratitude and wonder. The passengers will be taken care of. FBI is handling debriefings. Medical teams are treating the injured. Everything is under control. And the hijackers, in custody, they'll be interrogated within the hour. Sierra nodded slowly. She knew what came next. The questions, the debriefings, the endless paperwork and interviews that followed every military incident. But something in Harrison's voice told her this was different. Something bigger was waiting in that vehicle. Lead the way, sir. The interior of the vehicle was dark and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Tinted windows blocked the flashing cameras. Soundproofing muffled the shouting reporters. Sierra sat across from General Harrison, her torn uniform a jarring contrast to his immaculate dress blues. The vehicle pulled away from the tarmac, leaving the circus behind. You look like you've been through hell, Harrison said. I've had worse days, sir. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Same old Phantom. 3 armed hijackers, 183 hostages, and you still find room for understatement. It's a gift. The smile faded. Harrison reached into his briefcase and produced a manila folder. Old-fashioned. The kind that suggested its contents were too sensitive for digital storage. He placed it on the seat between them. The hijacking wasn't random, Sierra. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still hit like a punch to the gut. Tell me. Harrison opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of Stone. Victor Kozlov. His face was younger in the image, his scars less prominent, but the cold eyes were unmistakable. Victor Kozlov, former Spetsnaz, dishonorably discharged in 2015 for excessive brutality during operations in Chechnya. For the past 5 years, he's been working as a contractor for an organization we've been tracking. What organization? We call it the Network, a loose confederation of former military operatives, intelligence assets, and mercenaries from a dozen different countries. They handle jobs that governments can't officially sanction: assassinations, kidnappings, industrial espionage, regime destabilization. Harrison pulled out another photograph. Sierra's blood turned to ice. A symbol, a wolf's head rendered in stark black lines, a single red eye that seemed to stare directly at her. Shadow Wolf, she whispered. So you recognize it. How could she not? That symbol had been burned into her nightmares for 5 years, ever since the day Maya's F-16 had exploded over the Hindu Kush. Ever since she had learned that the missile that killed her best friend had come from a source that shouldn't have existed. Shadow Wolf was the code name of the operative who had provided that missile. The man who had supplied American enemies with weapons that killed American soldiers. The ghost who had haunted her dreams since the day she watched Maya die. We thought he was dead, Sierra said. The after-action report said he was eliminated in the retaliatory strike. The after-action report was wrong. Harrison's voice was grim. Shadow Wolf survived, and for the past 5 years he's been building something. An army, a network of assets positioned across the globe waiting for orders. What kind of orders? We don't know, but 6 months ago we intercepted a communication that mentioned you specifically. Sierra's hands clenched into fists. Me? Harrison pulled out another document, a transcript of an intercepted transmission. The Phantom must be acquired. She is the key to Phase 2. All resources are authorized. Failure is not acceptable. The words swam before her eyes. Why? She demanded. Why me? What does he want? That's what we need to find out. Harrison closed the folder. The hijacking was a test, Sierra, or maybe a recruitment attempt. Shadow Wolf wanted to see what you were capable of, wanted to confirm that the stories about Phantom were true. And now he knows. And now he knows. The vehicle slowed as they approached a private airfield on the outskirts of Seattle. Through the tinted windows, Sierra could see a military transport plane waiting on the runway. Where are we going? Langley, for a full debrief. Harrison paused. And to discuss your options. What options? You can walk away, go back to your apartment, your anonymity, your careful little life. The FBI will handle the prosecution of the hijackers. Your identity will be protected as much as possible. Within a few months, the story will fade. You can disappear again. Sierra stared at him. Or you can help us find Shadow Wolf. Stop him before Phase 2, whatever it is, begins. You want me to come back? I want you to finish what started 5 years ago. Harrison's voice was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Maya Brennan died because of Shadow Wolf. 47 other American service members have died because of weapons and intelligence he provided to our enemies. And those are just the ones we know about. The name hit like a physical blow. Maya. Sierra closed her eyes and saw her best friend's face. That crooked smile, those bright eyes full of life and laughter. The woman who had been more like a sister than a wingman. The woman who had died so that Sierra could live. There's something else you should know, Harrison continued. Something that wasn't in the official reports. Sierra opened her eyes. What? 3 months before Maya was killed, we received intelligence suggesting that Shadow Wolf had a source inside our operations. Someone feeding him information about flight schedules, patrol routes, pilot assignments. The words hung in the air like poison. You're saying someone betrayed us. I'm saying it's possible. We never confirmed the intelligence. After Maya's death, the investigation was complicated. Complicated how? The lead investigator was killed in a car accident 2 weeks after he started. The backup files were corrupted. Key witnesses were reassigned to classified operations overseas. Harrison's jaw tightened. At the time, we attributed it to bad luck and bureaucratic confusion. Now I'm not so sure. Sierra's mind raced through the implications. If Shadow Wolf had a mole inside the Air Force, that meant Maya's death wasn't just an act of war. It was murder. Premeditated. Deliberate. Someone had sold out their own people for money or ideology, or something even darker. And that someone might still be out there. Still feeding information, still getting people killed. Who knew about our flight plan that day? Sierra asked. Who had access to our patrol route? A lot of people. Too many to narrow down without more information. So we need more information. Harrison nodded slowly. That's why I need you, Sierra. You knew Maya better than anyone. You flew with her. You trained with her. If anyone can find the connection between her death and Shadow Wolf, it's you. The vehicle stopped at the edge of the runway. Through the window, Sierra could see the transport plane's engines warming up. Its ramp was down waiting. A choice waited at the top of that ramp. She could walk away, disappear back into civilian life, spend the rest of her days serving coffee at 30,000 feet pretending that her past didn't exist. Or she could face the ghost that had been haunting her for 5 years. There's one condition, she said finally. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Name it. When we find Shadow Wolf, her voice was cold, hard, the voice of a woman who had spent 4 years running from her grief and had finally decided to stop. When we finally corner him, I'm the one who takes him down. Sierra, not a drone strike, not a SEAL team, me. She met his eyes without flinching. Maya was my wingman, my sister in everything but blood. Her death is my responsibility. Her justice is my right. The general was silent for a long moment. The wind howled outside the vehicle, carrying the smell of jet fuel and rain. That's not how we typically operate, he said finally. Then change how you operate. Harrison studied her face, saw the determination there. The grief transformed into purpose. The rage that had been simmering for 5 years finally given direction. Agreed, he said quietly. When the time comes, Shadow Wolf is yours. Sierra opened the vehicle door and stepped out into the wind. The transport plane waited, its engines humming, with barely contained power. Beyond it, the clouds were gathering on the horizon. A storm was coming, but Sierra had weathered storms before. She walked toward the ramp without looking back. 1 month later, the world had moved on. The hijacking of United Flight 1147 had dominated news cycles for approximately 72 hours before being displaced by a political scandal, a celebrity divorce, and the usual parade of human tragedy that constituted modern media. The passengers had returned to their lives. The construction foreman had undergone surgery to repair his severed tendons. Captain Morris had recovered from his concussion and returned to flying. Senator Bradford had given 17 interviews about his composure under pressure, carefully omitting the part where he had been knocked unconscious by a single punch. But some ripples continued to spread. In Seattle, Vivian Hartley gave birth to a healthy baby girl on November 15th. 7 pounds 3 ounces, 10 fingers, and 10 toes. A perfect miracle. She named her Sierra. When the nurses asked about the unusual name, Vivian just smiled. Someone saved my life once, she said, and my daughter's life. I wanted her to grow up knowing that courage comes in small packages. In Dallas, an 8-year-old boy named Cody started taking martial arts classes at a local dojo. His mother didn't understand the sudden interest, but she supported it anyway. When his instructor asked why he wanted to learn to fight, Cody's answer was simple. So I can help people, like the superhero lady on the airplane. In Phoenix, Colonel Marcus Webb sat down at his computer and wrote a blog post about his experience. He didn't reveal everything. Some secrets were worth keeping, but he did write about courage. Today I witnessed something remarkable. The post began. I watched a woman who had every reason to stay hidden choose to reveal herself. I watched her sacrifice her anonymity, her safety, and nearly her life to protect 183 strangers. I don't know where she is now. I don't know what comes next for her. But I know this: heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they push beverage carts. Sometimes they serve coffee with a smile. And sometimes when evil shows its face, they stand up and say no more. The post went viral within hours. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Everyone wanted to know more about the mysterious Major Cole. 3 days after his blog went viral, Colonel Webb sat down and wrote a different kind of message. A personal one. A letter addressed to Major Sierra Cole, care of the Department of Defense. He didn't know if it would reach her, didn't know if she would ever read it, but some things needed to be said. Major Cole, I spent 18 years keeping aircraft in the sky. I thought I understood what courage looked like. I was wrong. Courage isn't just facing danger. It's facing danger when you could walk away. It's standing up when staying down is safer. It's revealing who you really are when hiding is easier. You showed me that on Flight 1147. I don't know where you are now. I don't know what battles you're fighting, but I want you to know this: for a few hours on that plane, I had the honor of serving alongside a true warrior. Semper Fi Phantom. Give them hell. Colonel Marcus Webb, USAF, retired. The letter arrived at a classified facility in Virginia 2 weeks later. Sierra read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket next to her heart. Some words were worth keeping close. In a classified facility somewhere in Virginia, Sierra stood before a wall of photographs and intelligence reports. Red strings connected faces to locations to events. A web of conspiracy that stretched across continents and years. At the center of it all, a single photograph. Shadow Wolf. The image was grainy, pulled from surveillance footage in Istanbul 18 months ago. It showed a man of medium height and build. Dark hair shot through with gray. A face that could have belonged to anyone. But the eyes, cold, calculating. The eyes of a predator who had spent his entire life hunting and killing without consequence. Sierra studied those eyes for the 100th time. Soon, she thought, soon I'll be looking into those eyes in person, and when I am one of us won't walk away. Major Cole. She turned to find General Harrison standing in the doorway. Sir, we have a lead. Kozlov talked. Sierra's attention sharpened. What did he say? Shadow Wolf is planning something big. Something called Operation Blackout. We don't have details yet, but Kozlov mentioned a date. December 1st. December 1st was 5 weeks away. What else? A location, Eastern Europe, somewhere in Ukraine. Harrison stepped closer, his voice dropping. And one more thing. The mole. Sierra went still. You found them. Not yet, but Kozlov confirmed they exist. Someone high up, very high up. Harrison's face was grim. He said Shadow Wolf calls them the architect, said they've been feeding information for over a decade. A decade. That meant the betrayal went back further than Maya's death. Further than Sierra's entire career. Someone had been selling out American service members for 10 years or more, and they were still doing it. I want this person, Sierra said quietly, almost as much as I want Shadow Wolf. You'll get them both, but first we need to find them. Harrison handed her a new folder. Your team is assembled. They're waiting in the briefing room. My team, Task Force Phantom, hand-picked operators, the best we have. He almost smiled. They've been waiting to meet you. The legend of the Damascus raid precedes you. Sierra took the folder, but didn't open it. I work alone. Not anymore. This is too big for one person, Sierra. Even someone like you. She wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that she didn't need help, didn't want partners, couldn't risk caring about anyone else after what happened to Maya. But Harrison was right. Shadow Wolf had built an army. She couldn't take down an army by herself. Fine, she said, but they follow my lead. Understood. Harrison turned toward the door. Briefing room, 10 minutes. He left her alone with the photographs and the red strings and the weight of everything that was coming. Sierra looked at Shadow Wolf's face one last time. I'm coming for you, she thought. For Maya. For everyone you've killed. For every life you've destroyed. You think you're the predator. You're wrong. You're the prey. And the Phantom is hunting. 12,000 miles away in a fortified compound, somewhere in Eastern Europe, a man sat alone in a darkened room. Multiple screens glowed before him. News broadcasts from around the world. All telling the same story from a month ago. The hijacking of United Flight 1147. The mysterious flight attendant who had neutralized 3 armed men. The decorated combat pilot who had been hiding in plain sight for 4 years. The Phantom. Shadow Wolf paused the footage on Sierra's face as she descended the aircraft stairs. Torn uniform, blood on her hands, steel in her eyes. She had changed since he last studied her file. The softness was gone. Grief and isolation had forged her into something harder. Something useful. He raised a glass of vodka toward the screen. Well done, Phantom. You passed the test. He picked up a secure phone. Phase 2 is green-lit. Execute on schedule. Beside his chair lay an open folder. Inside, photographs of a man whose name would shake the American military to its core. The Mole. The traitor who had sold out Maya Brennan's flight plan 5 years ago. The same traitor who currently sat on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Shadow Wolf smiled at Sierra's frozen image. You think you're hunting me, Phantom? You think you're the predator now. He finished his vodka and set the glass aside. But you were never the hunter. His finger traced the outline of her face on the screen. You were always the bait. The screens continued to glow in the darkness. The game continued. and the Phantom had no idea what was coming, but she would learn. Soon enough, she would learn. The end. This was not an ending. It was a beginning. Shadow Wolf was out there. The mole was still hidden. Phase 2 was coming, and Sierra Cole was ready. She had spent 4 years pretending to be invisible. Those days were over. The Phantom had returned, and she was just getting started.